Welcome to the Draft Professors channel. The best in NFL draft analysis all year long.
Hey, good evening, everybody. Welcome to the Draft Professor. My name's Jim. I am joined by Draft Professors Drew, Taylor, and Jordan. We were having a lot of fun backstage, and we're like, oh, yeah, we have to go live so we can continue the discussion. But so on the Draft Professor draft order, I'm going to say I'm low on Atlanta. And apparently I'm not the only one. There are people that are predicting Atlanta to finish, draft in the top 5. Drew, where do you have Atlanta finishing?
Are we talking bias or non-biased? Bias 0-17.
Oh, throw your Saints
blown out by like
40. Why
40.
not? Why not? Yeah.
Unbiasedly, I genuinely think like 4 wins. I am not inspired by the roster a lot. Yeah, they have some fun pieces, and Bijan Robinson, Drake London, Crystal Bob is better, and maybe one of their quarterbacks can pop onto the scene. But outside of that, it just doesn't scare me. Their roster, and I do think they have the weakest team in the NFC South, and I think that the standings at the end of the year will reflect that.
So Jordan, how about you? You are also an NFC South. You're a fan of a different team in the NFC South. Do you see Atlanta as the 4th place team?
I do. I think they're the worst. They have the worst roster. Obviously, I think the high end talent on their roster is very good. Like Drew mentioned, you have the Bijans, the Drake. I think their secondary is really good. But that front four, especially if James Pierce does face a suspension, I don't know how that's going to play out. But if he faces a suspension, they're going to be hurting in the front 7 just because I'm not a fan of their linebackers at all. I think they have one of the worst linebacker rooms in the NFL. And then again, last year, I get they were second in sacks, but they were not even top 15 in pressure rate. So, what does that defense look like if they're not blitzing, right? So, and again, we talked about the quarterback situation backstage. I don't have a lot of confidence in those two guys, and I don't even think Kevin Stefanski does. And I don't think anybody has confidence in Kevin Stefanski. So, again, I wouldn't be shocked if they're picking top 5. That's just who they are.
They're perennial chokers. That's all we can say.
When I do my draft order, right? This is one of my favorite things to do is to have a draft order in the summer because there's only a few people that do mock drafts in the summer, so it's more fun to talk about than whatever effects it has on a mock draft. But I look at who has the 10 worst quarterback situations in the league. And those are always the teams that I put in the top 10. And I'm usually right on 7 of the 10 teams. It's easier to be right about who's at the bottom than it is about who's at the top, in my opinion. But Taylor, I am curious, when you look at the NFC South, which teams do you see have the strongest roster and which teams do you think have the weakest roster?
Well, I think it's interesting. I'm just going to say this about the Falcons real quick while we're all obviously NFC South haters here. I just want to say Tua has never had the first losing record Tua has ever had as a quarterback was last year, 6-8. So the recency bias is off the chart. Now, Michael Penix Jr., I don't care what you say. That dude sucks. He was my QB7 coming out. I had no reason to believe he would be drafted in the first round. I cannot stand Mike. The Michael Penix hype was out of control. He's been terrible. He's not going to start. Flat out, he's not going to start. Tua's going to be the starter. So Tua's never been sacked more than 30 times, which bodes well for them in a single season because, their offensive line is not great. We know that their right tackle situation is just terrible. You have to start Jawan Taylor out there. Free agency they picked up from the Chiefs, not great. I think the Falcons definitely have an interesting roster. They do have the lowest odds. I might be sprinkling a little bit on that because I don't think the division is – I'm not sure there's a 10-win team in the entire division. So – it's kind of a wedge. I could see every single team ending between 7-10 and 10-7, but I think the Falcons are a little bit better than you guys are giving them credit for. I know you talked about the secondary a little bit, but they were really good at the end of last year, like Xavier Watts, Jesse Bates. Now they have both Terrells. It really does kind of depend on what happens with James Pierce Jr. because if he misses time, that edge room is going to be real rough. They do have Jalen Walker though, who had a decent rookie year as well. So a lot of young guys on defense, but no real number 2 wide receiver, kind of a different running back room as well. So definitely near the bottom of the talent pool. But, if Tua can be better than Bryce Young, just straight up one-on-one. Like, Bryce Young isn't that good. Like, Tua can be better than Tyler Shuck. Tyler Shuck's proven a little bit, but he's not that good. Like, Tua can be better. Tua can't be better than Baker Mayfield. Nobody in the division can be better than Baker Mayfield. He's the best quarterback in the division. I would probably lean. I think the Saints and the Panthers probably have the best rosters. I think for some reason Baker and the Bucks, I just can't see it working out. I think this might be the last year of old Bulls out there down south. So I don't know if that's going to work out. I have more confidence in the Falcons winning the division than the Bucks if they trade Vita Vea, which is the talk of the town recently. But yeah, I think it'll be ultimately a battle between the Saints and the Panthers. I mean, Panthers lucked their way into it last year, but maybe this year they'll have a better start and can kind of ride that into it. I'm excited to see Tyler Shuck. I know I just said he couldn't be better. He isn't better than Tua, right? I don't know if he's better than Tua right now. It's really close. I could see them having very similar years. Whichever one has a better year, obviously has a better chance to win the division. But get Mike Penix all the way out of my face.
That's a smart statement with this group with Jordan and I. But I think what's going to really separate Shuck and Tua is just whichever weapons can be more consistent. I do think the Saints have a lot higher potential with that. I mean, you've got Chris Olave, you've got Travis Etienne, you have Jordan Tyson. It's just if they can stay injury free. If they're on the field, I think the Saints will be the leader, and I think Shuck will have the best statistical season inside the NFC South. But if they're off, and like week 18 Saints last year, Dante Pettis, you had Ronnie Bell as your top 2 wide receivers. If that happens at any time this year, then I do think you have Bryce Young and maybe even Tua overtake him in the statistics. But yeah.
Jordan, any final word?
Yeah, I don't really want to use the excuse that Bryce Young hasn't had talent, but Bryce Young hasn't had talent around him. I get we had Tedderell McMillan, but if anybody here can tell me who the wide receiver 2 was for Carolina outside of Xavier Legette, because we know he's not an NFL wide receiver.
It's Jalen Coker. It's Jalen Coker, the GOAT. It's Jalen Coker, the GOAT.
Holy Cross legend. Yeah.
Yeah, I love Jalen Coker. He was injured until week 10. You know what I'm saying? So, like, the first 10 weeks of the season, Hunter Renfrow was getting snaps. Hunter Renfrow is probably selling car insurance right now.
Yeah, not great.
Bryson Tremaine was our wide receiver 2, week 2. I didn't know who Bryson Tremaine was last year, and I'm a Panthers fan. So I 100% agree. I think, like, in totality, I think Shuck has the higher ceiling right now. And I'm interested to see how Baker looks without Mike Evans, because, I mean, that's a huge piece that he lost. And I get it, that wide receiver room is still talented, but it's still Mike Evans, and nobody's replacing that. But, yeah, we'll see. It's going to be an interesting season.
So apparently Hank, created a mock draft with Atlanta picking really early, and he caught some flack. And Hank has podcasted with Draft Professor for close to a year. So, like Hank, I have a very similar draft order on the Draft Professor simulator. So I see it the same way that you did. It sounds like you have some agreement on the podcast a little bit, but anyway, we thought we would come to the defense of the people that have Atlanta pretty low in the draft order. We're actually here to talk about the draft prospects on Duke, NC State, and North Carolina. And it was supposed to be North Carolina, I think, originally. And then the feedback was given, well, we need more players to talk about, so let's just do all the teams in North Carolina. Shaw, this was your first look at the draft prospects on all 3 teams, right?
Yes.
Okay. Who's the first player that you want to mention?
The first player I want to mention is, I think we should just get right into it, rip the Band-Aid off. That's CJ Bailey. Let's talk about who some draft professors and some non-draft professors have had as their QB1, as high has. And I don't know if I'm there. I'm not really anywhere close. I kind of think CJ Bailey right now at this stage, and CJ Bailey, now he has all the tools, 6'6", 213 pounds, but he's only a junior. He does have every trait that you want. He's fast. He moves like a gazelle. He can really get out of the pocket and he can run. But oh boy, he cannot throw. His footwork is, it's real bad, and it has improved a little bit. But I think his freshman season was a lot of compensated by he had Casey Concepcion on that roster, so that helped a ton. He had Justin Jolie on that roster. He had NFL talent around him. But two of the games I watched, Miami, Notre Dame, and another one I watched was Duke, and in all of those games, I thought CJ Bailey was pretty bad. The Duke game last year really stuck out to me because it was such a winnable game. And the entire time, he just kept turning the ball over. He tried to force the ball into coverage. He was missing open targets. His footwork was sloppy. Now, when he took off and run, he gashed him. He is a good running quarterback. But at this stage in the process, he is not a better prospect than Taylon Green. And Taylon Green went sixth round. So you cannot convince me that CJ Bailey is even anywhere near the quarterback one stratosphere at this point after watching those games. He couldn't do anything against Miami. They had opportunities early in that game as well. It's not like Miami just came in and sacked him a bunch of times and steamrolled him. He had open receivers on the left, open receivers down the field, and he couldn't hit them. So from a pure pocket passing standpoint, CJ Bailey does not have it right now. And that's okay. Lamar Jackson didn't have it. Granted, he was the fifth quarterback taken in his class, so he wasn't QB1 either. And obviously, we know what Lamar Jackson is now. I'm not saying CJ Bailey is Lamar Jackson. I'm just saying they're very, in similar stages of their career. I do think CJ Bailey will ultimately be a 2028 guy. I see almost no world in which he can, rocket his way up into being a first-round pick in this year's class, which is borderline the only reason you would come out as an early declare, right? We've seen it with Drew Aller. We've seen it with some of these other quarterbacks that, are willing to go back to try to improve their draft stock. And, Bailey is just, he's an athlete. And the biggest thing with him also that I noticed, he's 6'6", 213. Where's his arm? He only has like a B. I wrote him down as a B- arm. And I think that's so interesting because, you see Lamar Jackson, when Lamar Jackson fires his fastball, that he has one of the strongest arms in the NFL. So that's the difference, and that's what can separate a guy that can move like that. We saw it with Taylon Green too. Taylon Green had an A+ arm as well. So some of these guys that are athletic, they can move in the pocket, they can run, they can really beat you. Sometimes you got to sit from the pocket and make throws, and that's just part of playing quarterback in the NFL. And right now, CJ Bailey is I think 2 years away from that.
So Jordan, you see a lot of ACC play. Where is CJ Bailey from a quarterback ranking in the ACC, and then how do you assess him from the draft board?
If we're including CJ Carr with Notre Dame in the ACC talks like we have been all cycle, CJ Bailey's probably the third best quarterback in the ACC right now. And I might be missing somebody, but right now he's third for sure.
And that's Mensa, Carr, Bailey, and someone.
Bailey. Yeah, I have that order: Mensa, Carr, Bailey. And that's just because, like what Taylor was saying, from a quarterback perspective, he's not there. Processing, he's not there. He makes poor decisions. He doesn't trust his arm. He doesn't really trust his legs sometimes, which he really should more often. I know, a lot of times he doesn't want to get labeled as a running back. Hey, brother, guess what? You're a crazy good athlete. Run the ball. Run the ball. Like Richard Sherman, pound the table, run the ball. Because that a lot of times that would have alleviated a lot of the mistakes that he made last year in the Duke game. Like Taylor said, they were up, I think it was 28-14. And as a Duke fan, I'm watching this game and I'm like, this dude is just going to continue to destroy us because it just made it look so easy in the early on. It was early on. That's probably like the first quarter and then some of the second quarter. After that, Manny Diaz just went to the board and was like, hey, this is what we're going to do. We're going to turn the faucet off and make him beat us with his arm, and he couldn't do it. Couldn't. And I think a lot of teams are seeing that. And my biggest gripe with CJ Bailey is he didn't use the portal. All his talent used the portal, and now he's coming back with all this talent gone. Ja'Karius Peak is at South Carolina, one of the best tackles in this class. Hollywood Smothers, one of the best running backs in this class, is gone. He's in Texas. Terrell Anderson, you're gone. He's at USC. You lost Justin Jolie to the NFL. There is a depleted roster, especially from the skill position standpoint at NC State, and he has to elevate it. I don't think he's at that level yet. So for me, early on, I was like, this guy is amazing, blah, blah. You look at the film and you go through the roster and you're thinking to yourself, can he be the guy that elevates this weak roster? Because that's what it is at NC State. It's a weak roster. I don't think he can. I think he's going to struggle. He's going to get sacked a lot because the offensive line is young and it's not as good as it was last year. He doesn't have the options to get the ball out quick like he did last year. So I think he's going to struggle, and that's what's also going to push him back to 2028 because there's stuff he's still got to learn from. And like I said, he's going to struggle, and he's going to look. They're probably going to say, "Oh, he's a fifth-round quarterback." Like he's probably going to get that reaction after some games this year, like where, oh, he needs to switch to wide receiver, he needs to switch to tight end. I'm not there. Obviously, I think he's a really good quarterback, and I think he could get to that level. But he does need another year. He does.
So, Drew, CJ Bailey, was this the first eval you had done on him?
I had watched him a while ago. He is my quarterback 15. So I'm pretty much in agreement with almost what everything's been said. And if you look at the pure high ceiling, like I get why people have him rated high, but I would rather have the Lenore Sellers, the players like that in this class who have a high ceiling, low floor. Well, because CJ Bailey, I mean, yeah, as we've said, excellent mobility. He's so good at running the ball. His arm just needs so much development. I do think if he adds about 10 pounds, which I think he should, because he's pretty skinny right now. So if he can do that, if he gets his footwork right, I do think he can have an above average arm. And I'm really hoping we do see that this year because he's not coming out barring some Heisman caliber season this year. So he's going to have 2 years to develop. If he can develop the body 1 year and get his mental side right the other year, or even partially in this year, I think you're going to have an enticing prospect come 2028. So I'm hopeful, but I'm not expecting anything right now from CJ Bailey.
Yeah. Why does this kind of remind me of Lenore Sellers last year? People were talking about him QB1. Well, they go 3-9, 4-8, something like that.
It was a bad season. It's the Lenore Sellers Glazer and a South Carolina bandwagon fan because of Lenore's.
Yeah, I just think it's a similar situation, right? You talk about dudes not using the portal. They lost a ton the year before, a ton in the draft the year before. That was a Manwary's year and all those other guys in the D line. So, yeah, that was a rough situation for them. I think CJ Bailey, what I will say is I think a lot of his arm talent will get cleaned up with the footwork. That's the biggest issue to me. Like, I don't think he can generate any drive on the ball. He can't hit open receivers because his feet are almost never set. He's almost always moving in the pocket one way or another. I wrote down that he has frantic feet. Like, his feet are always just like, he doesn't know what to do with them. It doesn't seem like he's not a lot of rhythm throws. So hopefully they get that cleaned up. But I'm kind of with Jordan on this. I don't see how that talent on the roster is going to do anything to help him.
Okay, so that being said, so Drew, we had NC State, Duke, and North Carolina. And I know that you were saying, okay, you don't have a lot of guys to talk about. So we'll go to you next. Who's a draft prospect from one of these three teams that you feel like, okay, this is a player that you feel confident would get drafted? Drew, you're muted.
Thank you. If I'm being honest, I don't know if I feel confident about any of them being drafted this year. I do think a lot of them are the 2028 prospects if they don't develop. So the one guy I'm going to bring up is Jordan Shipp, the wide receiver from North Carolina. Last year, he was the team's leader receiver with 60 receptions, 671 yards, and 6 touchdowns. He's got a good frame, 6'2", 190 pounds. The one sentence I wrote to kind of sum him up is, Jordan Shipp is a raw route runner who will likely be a 2028 prospect, but his combination of size, reliable hands, and versatility make him a promising player who could break out this year. It's not saying he's got really good hands. Like, he's able to make consistently reel in off-target catches. He's got good athleticism. He's can build up really good vertical speed. So I do like a lot of that with him, but he's just limited right now. His route tree, he's just not a refined route runner, mediocre short area quickness. And I saw if he was on the line and didn't have a running start, he just doesn't get enough juice to create separation in. Like, he just doesn't have enough route running or just pure explosiveness to burn his defender. So he was kind of forced to be that slot Z receiver where he's either in motion getting a run up or something like that, and he doesn't have to go up against press coverage, because I just didn't think he could do it otherwise. So he's a guy I'm hopeful will improve over the next couple of years, and he's undoubtedly going to be a focal point in UNC's offense. Like, he will be the primary target. I wouldn't be surprised to see him go over 800 or so yards receiving. But he's one that I just need to see a lot of development before, and I don't know if he's going to be able to do that in 1 year. So he's one guy I'd have my eye out for 2028.
Okay, so Jordan, did you have Jordan Ship on your board?
2028 as well.
2028 as well.
Yeah. I think he's probably the second best player on UNC's roster this year and last year. Good talent, but like Drew said, he's still learning. He's still growing, still developing. I don't think the offense really did him any favors last year. And I think he still had, was it 600 yards, 600 plus yards last year, which was a solid season considering that how bad that offense was. So yeah,
671.
Yeah. Yep. Okay. So he had a good year. Like I said, considering what he was working with on offense, I don't know if it's going to be any better this year with Billy Edwards at quarterback. But again, I think he's going to have another year where it's 700, 800 yards season, where it's like, okay, this guy is very intriguing going into his senior year.
One interesting thing about him was that they did not target him downfield. His average depth of target was 8.9 yards, which is like insanely low. So he was not that dynamic threat. They really used him a lot in whether it's screens or just quick routes. So yeah, I love what Jordan said, that I don't think their offense did him any favors.
Yeah,
so
like
I'd be interested to see. Yeah, they just couldn't trust. Was it Lopez last year, I believe, Gio Lopez, to throw the ball downfield. So they just didn't have him run really anything downfield. So yeah, as we said, Billy Edwards, I don't know if he's going to be able to do that. So he's one guy that maybe after this year, I wouldn't mind to see hit the transfer portal and go to a little bit better of a destination. But we'll see what it does. I mean, obviously a lot can change in 1 year. So kind of excited to see it. But yeah, he's a talented player, but I just don't know how much more he can grow at North Carolina.
And Taylor, did Jordan Ship make it onto your watch list?
Yeah, he did. I actually, I liked a little bit more. I think I liked his route skills a little bit more kind of deep down the field. So like to your point, Drew, like they didn't throw him the ball downfield, but I think he can run those routes. I just don't think he was really asked to do that. And I think he's pretty fast and he has some shiftiness to his routes. So I'm excited to see him grow. It's kind of weird when you watch him, like kind of watch the highlights. You kind of like, oh, he kind of runs and moves like Jordan Tyson, but you have to remind yourself that he is in fact very much not Jordan Tyson. So I do think probably more of a 2028 guy, but yeah, I mean, I wouldn't be surprised to see him in that same number that Jordan said, 700, 800 yards. Like he should be their wide receiver one. I just like, what is that? What does a college wide receiver one for a 4-8 team look like, you know?
Yeah. It's like a wide receiver one on an NFL team is a great fantasy football option. But for the NFL draft, I don't think we value the wide receiver ones on bad teams as much.
No, not at all.
No. So, Jordan, you said that Jordan Ship was your second highest rated player in North Carolina.
Yeah.
Who is your highest UNC player?
It's the edge. It's Melkart Abu-Jadi. The biggest thing that I'll preach with him for this year, if he wants to get drafted earlier than day 3, because I right now I have a 4th round grade on him, is just consistency, right? Because when he flashes, has great size. I think he measured in 6'5", 250 or 260. So really good size for an edge. Don't think he has the upper echelon athleticism. I think he's very strong at the point of attack. Very similar to Bo Atkinson, who's at Ohio State now, who was at Carolina recently. They can take over games. They can take over games as far as the pass rusher goes. But he does, like I said, he needs to be more consistent in the run game because he, like I said, he has the size, but you know, there are some occasions where he can get washed down, you know, by the pulling guard or, you know, a tackle or anything like that. You know, I've seen double teams between tackles and tight ends move him off his spot. So again, I just need to be more consistent and maybe another year in the weight room that'll do it for him. Because like I said, right now I have him as a 4th round. I have a 4th round grade on him, but I wouldn't be shocked if he was a top 65, top 75 player by the end of the season.
Okay, so did anybody have Melkart Abdul-Jabbar on their board? So Drew, you're not in your head, yes. So what were your thoughts on the North Carolina edge?
Yeah, I'm pretty similar to Jordan. Maybe I'm a touch lower just because I don't buy into his athleticism as much. He's 100%. He's got a toolbox of pass rush moves. And when he flashes, he does flash. Like, as Jordan said, he can take over and single-handedly win a defensive game. But I just don't think he's as good of a athlete to consistently create that, threaten the outside shoulder and win that ways. He had a very productive season, 10.5 sacks, 12 tackles for loss, 42 pressures. But I do want to see him grow a little bit more. I'm right around the 5th or 6th round range for him because someone of his skill set is going to get drafted and he will be an impactful player in the NFL. But I just want to see him develop a little bit more and grow into more of an athlete.
And Taylor, I'll kick this one to you. Did you have a chance to watch Melkart?
Yeah, I did. I do 100% agree with Jordan's take on the consistency because about 9 of his sacks came in 3 total games. They were all in a row. It was a great stretch, but that is very up and down. You're basically going, because I think it happened right in the middle of the year. So he went the first, 6 games with 1 total sack, two total sacks, and then the last 3 games he only had 1. So really just inconsistent kind of across the board. But man, when it flashes, it flashes. You talk about getting 3 sacks in a game. You do that multiple times. That's impressive. But I thought overall he's pretty tight. I don't think he's necessarily the most athletic, but he is so long that like his arms are able to get into the chest of the offensive tackle so quickly, and he can just do whatever he wants with them. So that's where he's going to win, I think, in terms of pass rushing, like just using his length to his advantage and, building pass rush moves off of that. But he's not going to beat you with speed. He's not going to bend around the offensive tackle around the quarter. I don't think that's really his game. But yeah, one of his that's another thing too, just increasing against, kind of the upper echelon of competition, right? Like those sacks came in the games against Virginia, Cal, and Stanford, and then he had another sack versus an FBS school. So when I'm looking at, players heading to the next level, like I want to see them dominate or hold their own against NFL competition. And really, we haven't. I would say we saw it a little bit in the Duke game because Duke had a couple guys on that offensive line, and he generated 5 threes in the game. Brian Parker being one of them, yes. So I think there's some hope and there's some belief that he can take the next step. But yeah, I would have him as a day 3 guy right now with the potential to hop onto the tail end of day 2. I don't know if he can get quite into the top 50 range. I would probably have him lower than that, but I do think that he has an opportunity to, another year in Belichick's defense. It's like, well, he could take a next step for sure.
Yeah, I would probably be more bullish on him if I saw him win consistently against Blake Miller when he played Clemson. And he, like I said, he was just a non-factor the entire game. And Clemson passed the ball. Like he had plenty of opportunities, just didn't do anything. So, and I don't think Clemson's offensive line in general outside of Blake Miller was good last year either. So, yeah, like I said, just consistency.
Yeah.
So Ryan Maffey mentioned Melkart Abdul-Jabbar of North Carolina on the channel last summer. We're talking about him again now.
I was on that podcast. He talked he was a big fan of him. That's kind of how that's the reason I watched him was because I remember him saying that.
Yeah. Because actually we did scout. You're right, Drew. I think I remember this now. We did scouting reports on him last
year. It was me,
too.
Jack, and Brian, I believe, when we talked about it.
Yeah. And then somebody did an edge big board on the channel this cycle. And Melkart Abdul-Jabbar made a couple of people's top 20 edge lists for this year. So I think it's a name we're going to want to be familiar with. But right now I'm hearing day 3, maybe his upside is day 2, but he needs to play more consistently.
Very back end of day 2. Like if the high end, like very Jack Sawyer. Like if I had to give him an NFL comp, I would say Jack Sawyer, somebody that wins with power, good culture fit. He's probably going to win with some other sacks as well. So, but for the most part, like Drew said, the athleticism is going to stand out, and it's probably what's going to keep him out of the first 2 days.
Okay, so we've covered 1 NC State player. We've covered 2 North Carolina players. Jordan, I think this is the part of the podcast where like there's a third team that plays football in North Carolina. Do you want to tell everybody who they are and who your favorite Duke draft prospect is?
Yeah, it's the best football team in the state of North Carolina, and it has been ever since Manny Diaz took over. And I would argue, really, when Mike Elko was there as well. So, Duke's got a couple guys. Like I was telling Taylor before, this is a very young roster. I don't anticipate 4 guys leaving, like starters leaving this year, any more than that. Like right now, I think Jeremiah Hazley is my highest rated player from Duke, the tight end. I think he's a really good player. I think he's in my top 10 tight end rankings. He was phenomenal last year. I think he's going to be phenomenal again this year. Probably going to rely on him a lot in the passing game just because we lost our top 5 wide receivers from last year's team. So, again, you're getting a 450 receiving tight end back. You're gonna rely on him. I don't have a top 100 grade on him right now either. So obviously this team is lacking NFL talent for the 2027 class. But he's definitely somebody that I think is going to be higher on boards than people are anticipating, especially come March and April. Like a former linebacker. So he's physical. I think the best part of his game, I know I mentioned 450 yards, 6 touchdowns last year. The best part of his game is his run blocking. And we talked about this on the ACC tight end show, how NFL teams are starting to value run blockers just as much. I would argue they're valuing them just as much as those guys who are solely receiving threats. Obviously, the guys who can do both, they're valued a lot higher. But if you're just a receiving threat, I mean, you could get drafted below somebody that is primarily a run blocker, and we see it a lot. So when he can do one thing at an elite level, which is run blocking, and something at a average level as far as his receiving, I think he's going to be valued. Obviously, his football intelligence is really high. Goes to Duke. He's a smart kid, former linebacker, so plays the game at a physical level. So my biggest knock on him, and I mentioned this before, Jim, his size. He does not have NFL size for a tight end. He's 6'3", 250. Right. So when you think about thresholds for a tight end, for me anyway, I'm looking at 6'4.5", maybe 6'5" is what I really want in the tight end. So for him, he's already behind the 8 ball. So he's gonna get looked down upon in that aspect, but the production is there.
Yeah, so Raj, like Jeremiah Hasley, when Raj covered the ACC, Taylor, did you have a chance to look at Jeremiah Hasley, the tight end from Duke?
Yeah, I did. I have him right now as an early to mid day 3 guy. I think like 4th, 5th round. Wouldn't be surprised if he slipped to the 6th just because of his size, right? Like Jordan mentioned it, like he is a little undersized for the position, but man, he is awesome. He's a great run blocker, like you said. I think he's just a good. There's some guys that are going to play in the NFL for 8 years or whatever, like the Dalton Schultzes, the Jake Fergusons of the world. Like these are just good tight ends, and like that's where I would have Hasley, or is it pronounced Hazley? I'm not really sure, but Hazley, whatever. I would have him in that category. Like I think that's about the range he's going to go. I think that's kind of the role he can play in the NFL. The biggest stat that stood out to me, he averages 7 yards after catch per reception. 7.2 yards per catch after reception, or yards after catch per reception. So that just tells me he gets the ball in his hand and he's able to make people miss. He's able to get downfield. Obviously the Tucker Crafts of the world are able to do that at an elite level in the NFL. Harold Fannon's another guy who, if Hazley goes out there and has 117 catches for 5,500 yards or 1,500 yards and 10 touchdowns, like Fannin did at Bowling Green, then maybe we're talking about him as a 3rd round pick. But I don't think that's going to happen. But needless to say, he is going to be a chain mover. Just he can run. Like I think he averaged like 11 yards per reception or something like that. And 7 of them are coming after the catch. So like he's just getting the ball checked down, and he was an outlet for Mensa last year. And I imagine he will be in a similar and more prominently featured role due to the lack of wide receivers that Jordan mentioned.
Yeah. So Jordan, you need to go back and replay the podcast, because when Taylor was talking good things about a Duke player, you had a huge smile on your face. It was actually really cool to see.
I'm glad I can make you smile like that today, Jordan.
So Drew, did you have a chance to look at Jeremiah Hasley?
I did, and I don't really have much more to add. I really agree with what Taylor and Jordan were saying. I love how Taylor noted his yards after catch, because 287 of his 454 yards came after the catch. So yeah, as Taylor was noting, great check down option who can turn a measly 2 or 3 yard gain into a first down. If you can have that out of your tight end, I'm glad. So yeah, I don't think he'll ever be a 1,000 yard player in the NFL or a top 3 tight end, but he's just going to be a really good tight end. Might not get the national love, but he's going to be a really good player that you're going to be able to win with.
Yeah. Do you have any context, Jordan, into the penalties? He looks like he had 4 penalties in the first 5 games, and then he only had 1 the rest of the year. Was that in run blocking?
Holding. Yeah, it's a lot of the holding. And that came, like I said, it was his first year playing tight end, like full-time tight end, because he got hurt in 2024. And he, like I said, he was a former linebacker. So 2024 was going to be his first year as a tight end. He got hurt, so he didn't really play. So 2025 came back. This is his first time. So now he's getting real game action. And like I said, it was just a learning curve for him.
Yeah, that makes sense. Looks like he improved on it quite a bit down the stretch. So I'm excited for his, step forward this year.
Okay. Taylor, I'll kick this to you next. Who's the next player that you want to talk about between NC State, North Carolina, and Duke?
That's a great question. Okay, so I will talk about kind of an underrated prospect, I think, late day 3 guy, but it's going to be the new right tackle for CJ Bailey at NC State, and that's Teague Anderson. Anderson is a 6'5", 322-pound redshirt senior. He started 24 games at right tackle for Utah State, and he just transferred in, and he will be the right tackle. At least that's how I have it on paper. I imagine you bring in a redshirt senior, right, with 24 plus starts, and he's probably going to be your guy at right tackle. So I haven't got a chance to do a bunch of, deep diving film on Utah State. If you guys can find that, let me know. But I like the size. I like everything that I've seen, from his time at Utah State. Like I think he started every game but 1. I think he had an injury and missed 1 game over those 2 seasons where he was the starter. So as a redshirt freshman, redshirt sophomore, I think he said they list him as a 5th-year senior, but it looks like he was on the roster last year and he didn't really play much. So he's a guy that I think maybe has a chance to kind of, get in there and develop and then play some this year. But man, when he was at Utah State, he was a pretty good tackle. So I wouldn't be surprised if he fills in some of the pieces on their offensive line that is very young and, obviously left in the transfer portal.
Okay, so Teague Anderson, that's a great shout out. So Drew or Jordan, do either of you have eyes on Teague Anderson, the tackle from NC State?
I tried to get a little bit on him. I was just able to find clips. Like I didn't go back and watch a lot of his Utah State, but I was able to find some clips on Twitter and all that. So what I saw is that he's got good movement skills. Like he's a good athlete, can set the edge, do all that pretty well. But his technique, especially in pass protection, just isn't great. His footwork really, really needs to be improved. It's very choppy. Like I don't even know how to describe it, but it's something that I'm really going to look for. His IQ, like he can have trouble identifying stunts and all that. So he's got the potential to become a very good tackle, but I really just need to see him develop it more. And as we're saying, we don't trust a lot of NC State's offensive weapons. So he's going to play a really big part in protecting CJ Bailey. And as we noted earlier, a lot with CJ Bailey, if he gets pressure, he really starts to deteriorate. So Anderson's performance is going to play a big role in that. So it's going to be interesting to see how they mesh.
Yeah, I think he's someone that can maybe kick inside to guard as well because of that. Some of that pass protection stuff is he's going to have to take a step forward this year for sure. But I do think he could probably kick inside to guard and be a little bit more, better suited to deal with those stunts and stuff like that, along with the pass protection. So I wanted to note that because I definitely forgot to say that.
So, Jordan, do you have Teague Anderson on your board?
I do not.
Okay. So, Jordan, kick this to you. Who's the next player you want to discuss?
So, I'll talk about a Duke offensive lineman just because it's fresh in my mind. It's Nick Del Grande. Came from Coastal Carolina, left tackle. I don't think he's an NFL tackle. I think he's an NFL guard. That's what I have him listed as. Last year, I think he had the 5th highest pass block rating 0 sacks given up, but you have to take those numbers with a grain of salt because the level of competition he was playing at Coastal Carolina, and I don't mean to offend anybody who's a Coastal Carolina fan, but he's playing against Dominion, App State, Marshall, Georgia State, Georgia Southern. There's not NFL caliber talent, on that roster. I went back and watched his 2024 tape at Coastal against Marshall, which they had Mike Green. I think it was Mike Green was there. It wasn't good. The tape wasn't good. Like he had a couple reps where he won against Mike Green, but the speed was just too much for him. And I know Mike Green, that's what he's known for. But if Mike Green, and who wasn't a first round talent, and I mean you could argue he was a first round talent, whatever. He was giving you trouble. I think you probably need to push inside. Now I think he could survive a year at Duke as an offensive tackle. I think he'll be fine there. But as far as his NFL future, it's definitely something he needs to work on because his footwork. I think he had really, like I have in my notes, stone feet. Like he has stone feet because he doesn't move. Like when he's doing his kick step, Mike Green's already passed him. Like it's crazy. Now again, that was 2024, so I didn't really get to watch a ton of his 2025 against elite competition. The tape looked better, but again, it's still something where he's not moving at an NFL offensive tackle rate. Like you think about somebody like a Tristan Wirfs, Penei Sewell, that's what, when I look at that, obviously not every tackle is going to be that, but that's what I'm basing it on. And he's nowhere close to those guys. So for me, pushing him inside, he probably could be a guard, maybe even a center. He's 6'4", 300 pounds. So doesn't really have guard size either. So something maybe, a couple years ago, Graham Barton went from left tackle. He was an All-American left tackle, pushed inside. Now he's a really good center for Tampa Bay. So that might be his future as well. But right now, he's playing left tackle for Duke. So, again, he's an upgrade over what we had last year. But for his sake, I think moving inside is definitely something he needs to work on.
So, Drew, did you get eyes on Nick Delgrand?
I didn't get eyes on him. I had him written down as someone to watch, and I have his stats down, but I did not have enough time to get eyes on him.
So, Drew, do you have another player on Duke, NC State, or North Carolina that you'd like to discuss?
I got some stuff on Nick Delgrand.
Yeah, let's go. Taylor.
Okay, go ahead, Taylor.
Oh, sorry. I just wanted to say he started 36 games over 3 seasons for Coastal Carolina. So he has a ton of experience, but I agree. He's just another long line of Duke tackle to center. I mean, I think that's where he has to be. And I think most of the reason why is he can't really run block. Like, I think that's where those stone feet really come into play. Like his run blocking is, like you mentioned, he was a top 5 pass blocker in the country. His run blocking might've been on the opposite end of that. Like, most of his grades and everything in the games are in the 50s. It's not ideal. And, you can see it with the stone feet. So, probably a guy who's going to need to kick inside. We'll see how he does against some of these ACC edge rushers. But sorry, Drew, go ahead. Tell us your next player.
No, I was low-key going to try to pass it. Like, I don't know if there's one guy I'm really excited about to talk about next. So,
Okay,
yeah.
So,
just hearing you guys talk about, I can say that
okay.
quick about Nick Delgrand, is that I think he's really going to struggle. Like, if I don't know Duke's schedule that well, but if they do go up against a Miami, I think
Damon Wilson's coming down. Lightfoot's
that's
coming.
The Damon Wilson matchup. If he did struggle with speed against Mike Green, that's one matchup that I would really have my eyes on, because you're gonna see if he improved. There's not many edge rushers in the nation who are as explosive as Damon Wilson. So if he can hold up against Wilson, then that's a pretty good sign. But if not, you could see another situation where he kind of gets exposed, and that's going to severely hinder his draft stock.
Yep.
Yeah.
So I'm looking at the rosters and the list of players now. There's another quarterback that I think may need to enter the discussion.
Jordan's face makes me think otherwise.
So Walker Eget on the quarterback show got some love. So we had a quarterback show on Thursdays. Walker Eget was one of the 41 quarterbacks that we discussed. And I would say he's definitely one of the top 20 of that group of 41 that we covered. How many of, Drew, did you get eyes on Walker Eget?
I do not. I have graded about 20 quarterbacks, but I do not have Walker Eggett
Well, and I think he's a transfer up, right? So
from San
Jordan, he is
Jose.
he's the quarterback for Duke.
Yeah.
So Jordan,
Yeah,
I'll
he's
kick
a
it to you.
quarterback. Yeah. I got eyes on him early. You know, when Mensa, you know, did his thing. So he was one of the names that was thrown out there as a possibility. So I'm watching him before he even committed. I mean, he does throw a really good ball. He throws the ball really, really well. I watched his tape. I try to watch his tape against quality competition, and I watched the Texas game, and that's just not fair to him. Like the talent gap between those rosters is so it's alarming. It's alarming, and his completion percentage was great because he's getting the ball out in 2 seconds because they can't pass block. But again, I think he's going to be somebody. If you watch Malik Murphy at Duke, and you saw what they were able to do with him in a really weak offense, then I think Walker's going to have similar success, maybe even more, because he's a better quarterback than Malik Murphy was when he got to Duke. So I think they're going to rely on Nate Shepherd early to let Walker get his feet wet. But like I said, his ability to get outside the pocket and make throws downfield was something that I thought was better than anticipated when I watched this film. So I'm eager to watch him. I think he has good size. I think he's like 6'3", 225. So good size for a quarterback. He does have some injury history, which is alarming. I think multiple knee injuries have kept him out. That's because he's a fifth-year player now. So that's concerning for me. But to get him so late in the process, we were blessed in that aspect. So I'm excited to see him. I don't have an NFL grade on him. Right now he's a UDFA, but I wouldn't be shocked if he has a season where he goes in the 5th round.
Yeah, and I was mentioning him because it's more of he's moving up a level of competition. But there were flashes. And remind me where he transferred from, Jordan?
San Jose State.
San Jose State. So when we covered him the first time, everybody in the quarterback show was, okay, this was like a better watch than they expected. Like Walker Eggett is a quarterback to keep your eye on. He is moving up a level in competition. So we'll see if he has some welcome to the ACC moments. But if you're looking for a project day 3 quarterback, he feels like I would take a day 3 pick on him, kind of thing. Taylor, did you have anything on Walker Eggett?
Nope, never heard of that guy.
Okay.
Doesn't bode well for Jordan and the Duke Blue Devils this year, in my opinion. But
okay. Any other Duke, North Carolina, or NC State player that is worthy of being mentioned on the podcast?
I'll rattle off a few here quick, just because I think that they might be worth. You mentioned, I think, getting Richmond highlight film. That was not possible to do. But North Carolina has 2 Richmond transfers, and they both play defense. Edge rusher Donovan Hoylett, who's 6'4", 245 pounds. He'll be a redshirt senior. Pretty quick off the edge and pretty high motor, chasing plays across the field from what I saw in the couple of highlights I could find. He's all Patriot team. He had 9 sacks last year in 2025. What I will say is people familiar with D2, D3 follow Brian on Twitter, right? You're familiar with Brian?
Yep.
Blanking
Brian Galvin. Yep.
Yeah.
Brian Galvin.
Okay. I DM'd him about these 2 dudes from Richmond, and he had never even heard of Donovan Hoylett. And he had 9 sacks last year at Richmond. So under the radar player, going to be, getting with Belichick. Just an interesting player to potentially, see rise into. I could not see him rising really past the 7th round, 6th or 7th round. But he's a guy, just if we're talking about players that could possibly jump their way up, he has a chance. Peyton Seelman is a linebacker, 6'1", 225, so a little undersized. But he had 79 tackles last year and only an 8% missed tackle rate. Pretty good for a volume tackle linebacker. So just a couple other guys. And then last guy I'll name here for North Carolina, left tackle, Jordan Hall. If you are familiar with this dude, he's 6'8", 336 pounds. He is a massive, massive human being. Not very athletic in space, as you can imagine, a guy that big, but his sheer size at left tackle, and quite honestly, the growing need for NFL tackles. Like the league needs better tackles that are bigger. We talk about arm length every offseason. It seems like this dude has no problem in the size category. It's just a matter of whether or not he can, turn into a decent lineman.
Thank you, Taylor. Drew, going once. Any other player you want to mention? Jordan, going twice.
Yeah, I'll mention Nick Morris Jr. From Duke. I think he's a phenomenal athlete. The biggest thing for him is he's had 2 season-ending injuries over the last 2 years. So his 2024 and 2025 have been wiped away due to season-ending injury. After I think the 2024 was game 1, 2025 it was game 4, and he was looking phenomenal. Early on last year before the injury. What stands out for him is he's just a really good athlete. I think he's made Bruce Feldman's freak list the last 2 years. So he's 6'3", 240, has a 40-inch vertical, 10.2 broad jump. They said he got up to 22 miles per hour on the GPS. And he's just super strong. I think he benched over 400, squatted over 500, power clean over 350. So when you talk about a linebacker, he looks the part, he fits the part from an athlete perspective. He just can't stay on the field. If you were talking about his 2023, you'd be like, okay, this guy could get drafted. The problem is that was 3 years ago, and teams are not looking at I don't think his medicals are going to check out, and it's sad. He's an awesome tackler. I think he missed 1 tackle in nearly 400 snaps in 2023. So, like I said, when he's on the field, he's a great player to have for Duke, and he means so much to our defense. Problem is, he's played 5 games the last 2 years. So that's obviously going to keep him down. I think I have him right now. I have a 7th round grade on him just because I don't think his medicals are going to check out. And it sucks because, like I said, he's a phenomenal athlete. He's a good player, but injuries.
So that was Nick Morris, the linebacker from Duke. Wanted to make sure I got the linebacker part in. Okay, well, first of all, guys, really good job covering the 3 teams. I had the impression that when I scheduled this, when Jordan and the team was doing the ACC podcast, I actually had the impression that North Carolina's roster was better. That was how this originally got even scheduled. So thank you for finding a way to constructively give us enough players to talk about by adding Duke and NC State in. So that was whoever came up with that idea backstage last week, you definitely get a star for the day. Taylor, do you want to let everybody know about all the other content that you make?
Yeah, absolutely. Head over to footballwithchaw.com. It's where I have my content. Subscribe. It's completely free. And I have my weekly newsletter comes out on Thursdays, and I'll have multiple weekly newsletters during the football season talking about anything from random kick return stats to NFL draft to gambling odds picks, individual weekly picks, things like that, daily fantasy lineups, all sorts of stuff. So, yeah, completely free to subscribe. So go do so.
Thank you, Taylor. Drew.
Yeah, you can find me all over the place, but the easiest way to connect with me is on X at Drew M. Collings. I'll be posting scouting reports, articles, random stuff I do on there. You can also find me. I'm a writer at a New Orleans Saints site called Who Dat Dish, part of Fansided. I have been there for about 2 years. You can find my articles about every day. Same thing with Roundtable Sports, where I cover the NFL draft for a variety of teams. An article posted a day for a random. It kind of depends on the day for the teams, whatever I'm feeling. Saints, 49ers, Texans, Vikings, Chargers, any of them. Then I write for the University Daily Kansan, the KU student newspaper. I'm a junior at KU. So I've got that. And I have a New Orleans Saints podcast called The Dome Discussions, where you can find us at least once a week.
Drew, thank you very much. And you are about to head to Europe as well, right?
Going to Sweden in 4 weeks for today to study abroad for about 5 or 6 months. So, yeah. We'll be over there. Have to find some time to podcast, but yeah, that'll be a fun experience.
Nice. Couldn't even make it 3 years in Lawrence, Kansas without leaving. Look at you.
Oh no, that's the one part I'm sad about going to. I could never stay in Manhattan. I was in the student section for the KU versus K-State football game 2 years ago in Manhattan. Oh, I got thrown off the bleachers. I was talking so much trash.
Was that the one that you guys fumbled the punt return to lose?
That was the one that we should have won, but
yeah, that was that one then.
Well, that was out of bounds, I think.
Oh well. How
Like
many-
that was 100% out of bounds. If we go back and look at that, the
I think
refs were.
is
I think
that
we need to
seven-
investigate those.
I
We
think-
needed to do this Kansas K-State.
think-
we need this on a podcast more.
Yeah, Jem, I think
Levi Wentz
K-State,
was
if
out of
I'm not
bounds.
mistaken, has beaten KU in football 17 consecutive times.
All that matters is basketball. TBT basketball
17.
tournament. What happened? Choked 2 leads.
They did check. Yeah, they did.
They
choke
choked
lead.
2 back-to leagues. Frank Mason
You know what, the
owns K-State. He owns that city.
You know, for all 14 people watching that, I hope they were entertained. Because
I mean, there were a lot of people in your stadium for that who all got to see their team lose. So
no, they won in Bramlage.
they lost the other 2. That's all that matters.
Yeah, they lost in Topeka at the Expo Center. That's where I'm
It's
from.
a random
Topeka.
assortment of teams, but we'll play in basketball. Basketball is what matters. That's
that's
what we
where all
care
the money
about.
is. Yep.
That's what I like. to hear.
That's where all the money is.
This is a basketball. This is a basketball podcast.
Yeah.
Who cares
Roy
about football for
Williams
this
come
one?
from Kansas.
We are all basketball.
Yeah,
What?
Roy Williams.
Wait,
just-
Roy Williams coached North Carolina, not Duke. I got the coaches mixed
He should have
up.
stayed
Got
at
the
Kansas.
Yeah. Who wouldn't want? Best basketball school.
So-
Like, we're covering a basketball podcast and not even mentioning the best one. That seems like a shame.
So, Jordan, I hope that exchange entertained you as much as it entertained me. How are you?
Oh, yeah, it was hilarious. But yeah, Jordan Hunt, Panthers Pulse on Twitter. I try to post as much NFL, college football draft content as much as I post Panthers content. I do okay at that. It's probably about 60-40 right now. So, but yeah, like if you want to talk sports in any capacity, you can find me on there. I try to post at least once, maybe 2 times on Substack a week as well. Panthers Pulse on there. So yeah.
So, first thing, I want to thank Jordan, Drew, and Taylor for helping put the show together. I want to thank Drew and Taylor for keeping the Kansas State discussion civil.
Mhm. Let us have
And I
a
wanna remind everybody that
KU State. Let us have one where we preview those 2 teams. See how that goes.
We can I think there's actually going to be a lot of that. Like when Nebraska plays Maryland, Price Carter and Matt Chabot are going to come on and do a preview.
Roll skurs, baby.
And I'm sure we can get Drew and Taylor on for Kansas K-State. And I actually think Matt Chabot is also a Kansas fan.
Yeah, he's a Kansas and Maryland fan.
Yeah, typical Chiefs fan. Just yeah.
So, Draft Professor is here every day. We have daily draft content. And to give you an idea, so tomorrow we're doing some team previews. And tomorrow we have 2 podcasts. So, tomorrow we have an offensive line podcast with Jerry Ostrowski, Owen, and Sam Teets. They're going to go through the offensive line class. And I told Jerry, talk about offensive line any way that you want. So, it'll be those 3 on the show. I'll just be backstage chiming in from the chat, but that should be a pretty good show. That is tomorrow at 8 p.m. Eastern. Following that, we're going to have the Texas team preview. We only have an hour to cover Texas. I was told we might need 3. So that should be a really good show where Christian and Will are going to break down the Texas roster and the draft eligible players on Texas, including Cam Coleman, Arch Manning, and there will be many, many others. Wednesday this week, we cover Oregon. Friday this week, we cover Ole Miss. So 3 of the 4 teams that we preview this week could be playing in the college football semifinal. I think Texas, Oregon, and Ole Miss all have a pretty good chance to be Final Four football teams. So should be a good week. We also do Louisville Sunday morning, and we do Illinois Sunday evening. So we have a lot more content coming your way. The best way to see the content is hit subscribe on YouTube. Please and thank you. You can also follow me at Draft Professor, at NFL Draft Fanatic. No, I am Fanatic on X. And the YouTube channel has the same name as the Twitter page. So for everybody watching, thank you so much. For Drew, Jordan, Taylor, myself, the 90 podcasters at the Draft Professor, thank you for tuning in. Enjoy your Monday night. We'll see you on a podcast again tomorrow. Thank you, everybody.